sure you mind, dude?
Don't mind.
All right.
All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So, Sasha Roiz?
Yeah.
Instead of Grimm. What can you tell us about Grimm? What can you tell us about your character?
What I can tell you about Grimm is that, well, you probably already heard this, right? I mean,
Well,
come
yeah.
on, you know.
But our readers have
Yeah,
it.
yeah, our readers have it. We have a very creative and loose approach to the Grimm fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
The basic premise is that it's a police procedural, and there are, like procedurals, we have a lot of crimes committed from week to week, and we discover that it's actually a lot of these fairy tale creatures that people probably will be familiar with from their childhood. And on top of that, we have this interesting story arc where our main character, Nick Burkhart, is a detective who discovers that he's a descendant of the line of Grimms. So he's, and what that means is that they were actually monster profilers.
Right.
And so these fairy tales were not fairy tales so much as warnings about these various creatures that exist in our world.
Okay.
And I will be playing, or I do play, Captain Renard, who is the captain of the police precinct and Nick's superior.
Okay.
And ostensibly everything's just as it should be, but behind the scenes we discover that the captain is in fact a descendant of this royal line, and he's got his a lot of minions who are these creatures in fact, and he's aware of what's going on in the world, and he's very much trying to raise an army of sorts and recapture his position as a prince or as a royal.
Okay.
And is going to need Nick as a Grimm to help him in this objective. So
Okay.
I'm aware of who Nick is, but he's a Grimm. He doesn't yet know who I am.
Okay. So.
Can I say all this?
Yeah,
We're
that's
good? All right.
That's all good so far.
So, in the pilot episode, you seem like kind of a shady, possibly go in the bad side, evil character.
Oh,
Do you see your character as more an ambiguous character, or are you pretty much on the dark, twisted, scary side?
I mean, I think that, anybody who purports to be one thing and isn't is a little dark. I'm not like evil, like wearing a cape evil.
Right.
But I'm, at the same time, I'm up to some nefarious activity, and I definitely have a very clear objective that's very, my own personal selfish objective. So I will stop at nothing to accomplish that.
Right. So, with the name Renard, which is fox in French, and in fairy tales, the fox is the
Sly one.
Sly trickster. Is that part of your character as well?
I think that's very much the reason for the name. Yeah. And in fact, they had me speaking a little bit of French in one of the episodes, which is fun and lends itself.
Are you meant to be descended from a French line or something?
I'm supposed to be descended of an old European family, so I do speak some French, I speak some Russian. They're going to try to utilize it and bring about this sense of old world.
So are the other characters going to be finding out about your ulterior motives pretty quickly, or is this
I think
something
it'll take time. I think it's a slow burn as far as a storyline, and I think it'll be very, very exciting when it's finally uncovered.
Okay.
Because it needs to be, and I'm sure it will be.
So how integrated are you into sort of the more investigations into the
from like episode to episode on the procedural level, the characters of Nick and Hank report to me, and we always have a few scenes where we try to break down the crime, and I give them certain orders, and it's very much procedural in that regards. And then there's a few scenes here and there that sort of speak of my other role in my other life.
Okay. So, I've been hearing from people, there's a lot of different fairy tales going on. Is there a favorite fairy tale that you've done anything with so far? A favorite myth?
From the ones that we work with?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. From the ones that we work with?
Yes.
Okay. I really enjoyed, there's several that I enjoyed. There was a very dark one that had to do with this goat creature, very much like a satire or a puck kind of creature. Who's slightly oversexed and keeps women in cages and so on and so forth, and is very much a charmer, like no woman can control herself around him. It's a very dark episode, but very interesting character. We've had one with bees, interestingly enough, which is not a fairy tale I'm familiar with, but we do take certain liberties as well. And there's this whole episode where these sort of bee creatures are. How's that working out?
My right hand is steadier than my left.
You know what? Do you want to lay it down somewhere? Maybe that'll be easier.
Let's do this.
That's kind of not so great.
I can do that.
You sure?
Yep.
Here, I'll lean back. Is that
There you
help at all?
go. It's all nice and casual now. We're
Okay.
good.
So there was this one episode that was bee creatures, and there was like a bee queen, and they're very much like the messengers. Much like in our world, you know, the scientifically speaking, like when anything is amiss in our environment, the bees are the first to sort of take note. So we use that mythology in our world as well. That was a very interesting episode too.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, and I guess more in general, do you have a favorite fairy tale?
My own favorite fairy tale?
Yes.
I grew up with a variety of fairy tales because my background is Russian, and you know, I had like just a mix of various languages and ethnicities kind of in my upbringing. So one of the fairy tales that always scared me was Baba Yaga, like with it was this witch that lived in this hut that had chicken legs, and the hut could move around, and it was just terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah, that one used to scare me quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I think I actually saw a movie version of that one time. It was
it's
weird.
It's scary, right? Anything with chicken legs is just creepy.
It was that whole surreal, creepy, fairy tale, not good stuff. Right. So, you were on Caprica before. How does this compare? Like, production, show, anything like that?
Well, I mean, you know, this is on a network, and so it's just a much larger demographic that we're going to be hitting. So, you know, it's different in the sense that we need to think of that. We need to consider that a little bit, be sensitive to that a little bit more. So have a broader appeal in one way. And I think this is a very appealing show and storyline. How does it compare? I mean, we're dealing as well with storylines and fairy tales that are familiar to people. Most people know, you know, at least a dozen fairy tales, even if they're not aware of it. In Caprica was our own show, our own mythology, so you had to bring people into that and you know, make them a fan of the world that we created. So in some ways this is kind of easier because we're dealing with a brand name, so to speak.
Right. So if you were to compare Grimm to any other show on the air or a really familiar show, what would be the closest comparison? What is the show like in any way?
It's hard to say because on one hand it's a CSI,
and
on the other hand it's a Tales from the Crypt. So I mean, I really don't know of any show that's kind of had that combination yet. So yeah, it's kind of like, you know, Twilight Zone meets CSI. You know what I mean? It's just something really unique in that. Maybe it'll be fun. So
how much of it, from what you've seen, is like the weekly procedural like CSI, and how much of it is sort of the ongoing story?
Oh, almost every week.
Really?
Almost every episode there's a crime and there's a whole CSI procedural element to it, and then, you know, we sort of sprinkle it with a few overriding arcs about the Grimm character, my character, various sort of mythology in the world. So, but there is like that one staple, which is that it is a criminal procedural.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.